Senator Crockwood. Yeah. And Senator Crockwood, your 4 minutes.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you very much for coming to the House this morning. The issue I wish to discuss with you this morning, Minister, covers both sides of your portfolios, and that is both sport and your transport portfolio. I believe, Minister, that you are not the kind of man that would want to have any form of nanny state or to over-regulate the sporting side of our lives. And I think you and I would agree that all sports should be allowed to continue, provided they continue in a correct and safe environment. The problem we have, Minister, and the problem that has been brought to my attention this morning, it relates to the use or misuse of scrambler motorcycles and quad bikes as well. I understand, and I'm quite shocked to learn this, I understand that children as young as 8 years of age are being provided with motorcycles of 50 cc's or upwards, which are off-road vehicles essentially, and they're designed for use as off-road vehicles. However, these kids are using these bikes and quads on the main public highways around housing estates. One of the things I saw when I researched this, Minister, was the Enniskerry Woods area, and some of the public pathways in Enniskerry were being recommended as places where children could learn to use their quad bikes, but beware of the fact there might be pedestrians walking along there. And clearly that's not a safe environment for kids to be using these. The other areas that I'm finding are places like Tala and Finglas, where these bikes are being used on the main road. The problem is, Minister, they have no registration. So a member of the Gardaí seeing one of these bikes on the road has no way of identifying the owner. So there's no registration, there is no tax, there is no insurance. If one of these vehicles runs into a bus, runs into a car, the likelihood is that the person driving the vehicle will be killed. More importantly, they will cause risk to life and limb of others, so they will. If the Gardaí pursue one of them that's driving through an estate, you're into a chase situation, and you can imagine a Garda car or a Garda motorcycle chasing after an 8-year-old kid on one of these bikes, and the child is injured. The Gardaí will immediately come under scrutiny from the general public. Why did you chase the child, right? So we have a serious problem with them. Not a huge problem, but a serious problem. And typically these things are left to run, and this didn't happen on your watch, Minister. This has gone on a long time. But now I have local authority members asking me to ask you to bring in some form of regulation that we will at least control how these bikes are being used, that we will have some form of recognition as to who owns them, where they belong, some form of identification mark that will allow us to be able to track down the users, and some means of ensuring that they're not used on the road, or if they are used on the road, that the full rigours of the law would apply. So, Minister, I thank you for your time coming here, and I thank you for your time listening to the issue, and I look forward to your response.
I will, Minister.
Thank you, Gaelic. And I'd like to thank the Senator for raising this matter with me. He's not the only person who's done so. It's come from a lot of local county councillors, including the chair of the JPC for SDCC. Only yesterday, Deirdre Donovan, who you're familiar with, been in touch with me about this, and I know it's a matter of great concern to a lot of local authority members. It's an issue with which I can both understand and sympathise with. Perhaps it might be helpful if I first set out, for clarity's sake, the current legal position in relation to the regulation of scrambler bikes under road traffic legislation, and then deal with the specific issues which were raised by Senator Crockwood. A scrambler is a mechanically propelled vehicle, which means that it is a vehicle intended or adapted for propulsion by mechanical power. As such, irrespective of engine capacity, under road traffic legislation, the user of a scrambler motorbike in a public place is legally bound to have insurance, road tax and a driving licence. and must also wear a helmet with severe penalties under the road traffic laws, including fixed charge notices, penalty points, fines and possible seizure of the vehicle for not being in compliance with these requirements. I'm aware of the fact that, notwithstanding what I've just said, that the Senator is highlighting situations where many people using scrambler bikes are not in compliance with those regulations. For the purposes of the Road Traffic Act, a public place means any public road and any street, road or other place to which the public have access with vehicles, whether as of right, by permission, and whether subject to or free of charge. Road traffic law does not extend to the use of mechanically propelled vehicles on private property. Certain places, such as parks under the control of local authorities, can be subject to bylaws which those authorities have the power to introduce to prohibit the use of vehicles. Some of these scrambler motorbikes do not comply with the requirements of the Road Traffic Construction, Equipment and Use of Vehicles Regulations 1963 to 2002 and the Road Traffic Lighting of Vehicles Regulations 1963 to 1996. These regulations prescribe standards in relation to essential matters such as brakes, steering, mirrors, safety glass, wipers, headlamps, rear lighting, indicators and reflectors. Such vehicles are not, therefore, considered suitable for use in a public place. The Road Traffic Act 2004 makes it an offence to supply a mechanically propelled vehicle to a person under 16 years of age. With effect from the 24th of January 2005, a person convicted of supplying a vehicle to a minor faces a fine of up to €5,000 or a term of imprisonment up to 6 months, or both. Mini-motorised scooters, micro-motorcycles and quadricycles also come within the definition of a mechanically propelled vehicle for road traffic law purposes, and the supply of such vehicles includes giving a gift or loan. As a result, it is illegal to supply such a vehicle to a person under 16 years of age. Enforcement of the road traffic laws are a matter for An Garda Síochána, and they say that they are satisfied that they have the necessary powers to deal with cases concerning the use of scrambler motorbikes and similar vehicles in public places under the Road Traffic Acts. However, it should be noted that the Garda Síochána does not have any legislative power to deal with scrambler bikes being driven on private land. Local authorities have the power to introduce bylaws to prohibit the use of vehicles in areas under their control, for example, parks. The Minister for Arts, Heritage, Regional, Rural and Gaeltacht Affairs has similar powers to control off-road vehicles in certain areas. For example, the unauthorised use of off-road vehicles is prohibited in certain national parks. Section 41 of the Road Traffic Act 1994 and the Road Traffic Act Section 41 Regulations 1995 set out the law relating to the detention of vehicles by An Garda Síochána in a public place, which provide 3 grounds for detaining a vehicle. 1. If the person driving the vehicle refuses or fails to produce there and then a driving licence, then having effect and licensing him, her, to drive the vehicle and the Garda is of the opinion that the person, by reason of his or her age, is ineligible to drive the vehicle. 2. The vehicle is registered in the state and the Garda reasonably believes that a policy of insurance is not in place for the vehicle. And 3. The vehicle is registered in the state and the motor tax has not been paid in respect of a continuous period of 3 months or more immediately prior to use. An Garda Síochána can also use Section 20 of the Road Traffic Act 1961 to perform an examination of roadworthiness of any vehicle being used in a public place. While An Garda Síochána has indicated to me that they are satisfied with the powers they have to deal with the use of scrambler motorbikes by underage and uninsured drivers in public places, following the representations from the Senator and from others, I will discuss the matter with my colleague, the Minister for Justice and Equality, to see if there is any legislative amendments needed to specifically suited to deal with the issues raised by the Senator.
Brief supplementary.
Yeah, absolutely. Minister, thanks very much. That's a very comprehensive answer. I would just ask that maybe your department might consider notifying the retailers of these bikes that there is a requirement on them to advise the purchaser that if they're purchasing it for somebody under the age of 16, that they need to be aware that they're breaking the law. And the other one is, and I don't expect an answer today on this, but would you ask your officials to consider some form of registration identity mark on these off-road bikes that don't need to comply with the on-road legislation? in order that they can be recognised as to who owns them and they can be tracked down if they're found to be off-road. So as Garda can pursue it without actually physically chasing after somebody, they take the registration number and they can go back to the owner at that stage and bring charges if necessary. I won't ask you to, but just to consider that, if you wouldn't mind, Minister. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Briefly, Minister. Yeah.
Yes, is the answer to that. Yeah.
Thank you. Very well. Sitting stands suspended until 11:30. Thank you. Thank you, Minister.